Okay, strap in, everybody. We're going deep today into a whole pile of opinions about Pixar's Soul based on user reviews from IMDb. And it's kind of wild to see how people react so differently to the same movie.
Yeah, it really highlights, how subjective the movie watching experience is. Like we're all looking through slightly different lenses, aren't we?
Absolutely. So instead of just saying thumbs up or thumbs down, these reviews give us a glimpse into what hits home for people and why, which can honestly be more interesting than the film itself.
Totally agree. It's like getting a sneak peek into how different minds process art and what they take away from it. So much richer than a simple star rating.
Exactly. So let's dig in. What are some of the big themes, the recurring threads we're seeing in these reviews? What's really bubbling to the surface?
Well, one of the most prominent themes is how Soul tackles this idea of purpose. But it's not the typical, chase your dreams, follow your passion narrative.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, it's more about finding meaning in everyday moments rather than chasing some grand, predefined goal.
Huh. That's definitely a different spin on the whole purpose thing. And kind of refreshing in a way. I'm curious, though, did everyone buy into this idea? I mean, it goes against a lot of what we're told about success and fulfillment.
You're right, it does, and some reviewers did struggle with it. Like The Little Songbird, they found it incredibly refreshing and honest. The idea of finding meaning in simple, everyday things really resonated with them.
That makes sense. It's almost like a permission slip to, relax a little, stop chasing those huge goals all the time, and just enjoy the ride.
Right, but then you have someone like Neon Gold, who felt like the message was a bit predictable, maybe even a little preachy.
Interesting. Why do you think that is? Is it possible that for some people, the idea of letting go of ambition entirely is almost threatening? Like we're so conditioned to survive, to achieve, that just being feels like a cop-out.
I think you're onto something there. Neon Gold even used the term surface level, implying they wanted a deeper, more nuanced exploration of purpose. Maybe it's not about abandoning ambition altogether, but more about reframing it, shifting our focus from external achievements to internal fulfillment.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's like maybe soul is less about finding your purpose and more about questioning the whole notion of it. What if it's not some preordained thing we need to discover, but something we create through our everyday experiences and choices?
That's a great question. And it's even more intriguing when you consider how Soul tackles other big, complex themes like life, death, and the afterlife. Some reviewers like Lana Souza even felt like those topics were maybe too mature for younger audiences.
It definitely pushes the boundaries for a Pixar film, that's for sure. You're right, this isn't your typical lighthearted, purely kid-friendly fare. It goes deep, touches on some pretty profound stuff.
Definitely. And it does so with a level of sophistication that really impressed a lot of the reviewers. That's especially true when it comes to the animation and the music.
Oh, the visuals. I'm seeing tons of words like stunning, vibrant, imaginative in these reviews. And Nigel Arifin specifically called out the incredible detail in the New York City scenes. It's like Pixar bottled the city's energy and poured it onto the screen.
Yeah. The animation is breathtaking. And the music is so much more than just background noise. It's woven into the story's very fabric. Reviewers consistently describe the score as heartwarming, catchy, and a wonderful tribute to jazz music. It's like the music itself is a character guiding us through Joe's journey.
I love that. Speaking of journeys, I noticed something kind of interesting about the humor in Soul. It's not the laugh-a-minute style we often associate with Pixar, is it? Set the When the Walls Fell even mentioned they hadn't laughed once during the film, but they still really enjoyed it. They called it sweet.
Right. It makes you wonder if Soul is going for a different kind of humor. One that's less about punchlines and more about subtle charm and warmth. Like the humor is embedded in the characters and their interactions rather than being forced or over the top.
Yeah, I can see that. But the lack of big laughs doesn't mean the film lacks emotional punch. We're seeing a lot of reviewers describing being deeply moved, even brought to tears. The Realist Max called it the greatest Pixar movie ever created, and specifically highlighted its emotional depth.
Yeah, Soul seems to be tapping into a deeper well of emotions, something more profound and resonant.
For sure. And it's not just about big dramatic moments either. Rebellious JF shared this beautiful, detailed list of all these tiny things they appreciate in life, clearly demonstrating, how the film's message really seeped into their soul and shifted their perspective.
It's like Soul gave them a new pair of glasses to view the world through, one that magnifies the beauty in everyday experiences.
Love that. And it seems like this ability to connect with the everyday is what makes Soul so special for many viewers. But some reviewers, like Inedit66336, felt it was a film more for adults, because of its complexity. They even felt their kids might have missed some of the deeper layers. It's fascinating how a single film can resonate so differently across age groups, isn't it? Like those classic picture books that have multiple levels of meaning. Kids can enjoy the surface story, while adults pick up on those deeper, more nuanced themes.
Exactly. And it's important to remember that even with all the praise Soul is getting, it's not without its critics. Some found the pacing uneven, like Champs Vita. They felt like the first half especially was rushed, like the movie needed more time to breathe, to really delve into its ideas.
That's a fair point. The film does jump between worlds and concepts pretty quickly. Maybe that whirlwind pace didn't work for everyone.
Right. And then you have reviewers like Terry Kenneth Barber, who, they appreciated the beauty of the story but didn't connect it as strongly with the characters. They felt like they weren't as memorable as in some other Pixar films.
It's a good reminder that even in a film as visually impressive and thematically rich as Soul, individual preferences still play a huge role. What speaks to one person might not resonate as strongly with another.
And welcome back to our deep dive into Soul as seen through the eyes of IMDb reviewers.
It's amazing, isn't it, how these reviews act like a mirror, reflecting not just the film's themes, but the viewer's own, experiences and values. Like we're getting a glimpse into their souls through their words.
Absolutely. It's fascinating. And one of the most intriguing reflections, I'd say, is how people wrestle with that central message, finding purpose in the everyday, not some big preordained goal. Berto Waite, for instance, pointed out that Soul isn't saying we need this huge overarching purpose to be happy. It's almost suggesting the opposite, isn't it?
It is. That's what makes it so interesting to think about. Soul seems to be saying it's okay to let go of that constant pressure to achieve, to strive to reach some distant finish line. And instead, maybe, just maybe, the journey itself is the reward. But as we saw earlier, not everyone embraces that message, do they? Some reviewers, like Neon Gold, found it a bit too simple, maybe even, preachy. Why do you think that is?
Well, maybe for some viewers, letting go of ambition entirely feels like, I don't know, like giving up a part of themselves. Remember, Neon Gold called the message surface level. Perhaps they're looking for a deeper exploration of what it means to be fulfilled, one that acknowledges how complex human ambition really is.
Right, right. Could it be that we're so conditioned, so programmed to chase success, to chase those achievements, that simply being present, finding joy in the mundane, feels wrong somehow? Like we should always be reaching for the next rung on the ladder.
It's a really interesting thought. And it raises the question, is there a bias, a cultural bias maybe, towards this constant striving? And does that make it harder to embrace the idea of just being? Does Soul challenge how we think about what makes a life meaningful?
Whoa, that's a big question. It's like Soul is holding up this mirror to our values and saying, what if your worth isn't tied to your accomplishments? What if it's enough to just be? No wonder people are having such passionate discussions about this film.
It's true. Soul forces us to confront some pretty deep-seated assumptions about success and happiness. And amidst all this philosophical conjuring, it's also giving us this, visual and auditory feast. Remember all those glowing reviews about the animation? Pixar really outdid themselves, especially, I think, with how they brought New York to life.
Oh, absolutely. Nigel Arifin couldn't stop raving about it. It's like they captured the city's pulse, its energy, that amazing mix of sights and sound. And the music, it's not just background noise, it's woven right into the DNA of the story.
Yes, and the reviewers consistently praised the score. Heartwarming, they called it, catchy. A celebration of jazz music. It's almost as if the music itself embodies the soul's journey, full of improvisation, soul-searching, all those unexpected turns that make life so interesting.
I love that. It's not just a film about jazz, it feels like jazz. And this brings us to something else I wanted to touch on, the film's emotional impact. Some viewers, like Sethian the Walls Fell, they missed the big laughs, the kind of humor we're used to from Pixar. But many, many others described being really moved, even, some said, brought to tears. It seems like Soul taps into a deeper well of emotions, something that resonates on a more personal level.
Definitely. The realist Max, for example, was deeply touched. They called it the greatest Pixar movie ever created. And I think that speaks to how Soul really hits those emotional chords, even without, relying on slapstick comedy or anything overly sentimental.
Right. It's like the film's power is in its subtlety, its quiet moments of reflection, its exploration of those universal experiences, that cut across age, background, beliefs. It encourages you to think but doesn't force it on you.
It does. And that introspection often leads to, well, a deeper understanding of oneself. Remember Rebellious JX review? They shared that list of all the small, everyday things they appreciate. A beautiful list. It's clear how Soul shifted their perspective, helped them see the world with fresh eyes.
It's like the film planted a seed, a seed of awareness, allowing them to see the beauty in the simple, the everyday.
Exactly. And this all circles back to the question of target audience. Some reviewers, like I'm It at 66336, felt Soul was too complex for kids, while others felt it had something for everyone. It's a fascinating debate, isn't it?
It really is. On one hand, you have these deep philosophical concepts that might fly right over kids' heads. But on the other hand, children often have this, natural sense of wonder and open-mindedness. They haven't built up those walls of cynicism or preconceptions that we adults sometimes have.
That's such a great point. Children approach things with curiosity, with openness. Who knows, maybe Soul will spark a lifelong love of jazz in a whole new generation. Or at least get them asking those big questions about life and purpose.
And even if they don't grasp every nuance of the message, they can still enjoy the visuals, the music, those lovable characters. It's a film that can be appreciated on different levels depending on the viewer's age and perspective.
Right, exactly. And speaking of different perspectives, let's not forget those reviewers who had some criticisms. Tim Svita, for example, found the pacing a bit uneven, especially in the first half, like the movie needed more time to breathe, to really flesh out its ideas.
It's true. Soul moves pretty quickly between worlds, between concepts. Maybe for some viewers that felt jarring or, I don't know, overwhelming.
And some reviewers, like Terry Kenneth Barber, while they appreciated the story, felt the characters weren't as memorable as, say, in other Pixar films.
It's a fair point. Even with its amazing visuals and powerful themes, the characters themselves might not have resonated with everyone. But even with these criticisms, it's clear that Soul is a film that sparks conversations, makes you reflect, challenges how you think about life, purpose, what it means to truly live. It's not passive. It's an invitation to explore those big questions. Welcome back to the deep dive. We're wrapping up our exploration of Soul, seen through the eyes of IMDb reviewers. And wow, this has been quite a journey. It's amazing how one film can spark so much discussion, so much introspection.
It really speaks to Soul's power as a film, I think. It doesn't just entertain you, it makes you think about those big questions. Life, death, purpose, what it means to exist. And for this last part, we're going to focus on some of the most, insightful reviews, the ones that really dug deep and found those hidden layers of meaning.
Yeah, the ones that went beyond I liked it or I didn't like it and really wrestled with the film's ideas.
Exactly. And one that really stands out is Babel Alexandria's review. They had this really interesting take on the film's spirituality, especially regarding those Jerrys who guide souls in The Great Before. They called them angels of science, which I thought was brilliant.
Oh, yeah. It's such a striking image, isn't it? It's not how we usually picture angels, all, ethereal and perfect. But in Soul, they're these quirky, imperfect beings, ruining the show, but even they don't have all the answers.
Right. It's a very different approach, a more relatable, humanized vision of spirituality, one that acknowledges the mystery and uncertainty of existence, which I think is refreshing.
It is. It's like the film is saying, hey, even those in charge are still figuring things out. It makes the whole concept of an afterlife less, I don't know, intimidating.
Exactly. More approachable. And it ties back to that idea of purpose, too. Soul doesn't give you a neat, tidy answer, no step-by-step guide. It's more about encouraging you to question things, to explore, to find your own meaning in all the, chaos and complexity of life.
It's like the film is giving us permission to be okay with not knowing everything, to embrace the messiness of it all.
And maybe that's the most valuable lesson, that Soul isn't about reaching some final destination, but about the journey of self-discovery, about those moments of joy, big and small, that make life worth living.
It's about appreciating the ride, even with all the bumps along the way.
Well said. And as we wrap up, I wanted to circle back to that question from the outline. The one about, if you could design The Great Before, what traits would you prioritize for souls before they enter the world?
Ooh, that's a good one. It really makes you think, doesn't it? What qualities would we want to instill? Creativity, empathy, resilience, that sense of wonder, something else entirely.
It really gets to the heart of what matters, what makes a life meaningful, what kind of world we want to create, for ourselves and for those who come after us.
And ultimately, the answer lies within each of us, I think. Soul reminds us that we all have the power to shape our own destinies, to find those sparks of joy and create a life that reflects our values.
Beautifully put. And thank you all for joining us on this deep dive into the world of soul. We hope it sparked your own curiosity, inspired you to keep exploring those big questions.
And remember, like Joe Gardner said, life is full of possibilities. Let's go find them.